The Fox Nation studio fell dead silent as the cameras rolled for what was supposed to be a friendly afternoon interview. The red leather chairs gleamed under the studio lights, and the familiar logo backdrop suggested this would be another routine political discussion. What started as a casual conversation about America's justice system was about to become the most humiliating 47 seconds in Charlie Kirk's entire career. The 30-year-old Turning Point USA founder sat confidently in his tailored navy suit, his signature smirk plastered across his face as he adjusted his American flag pin. Across from him sat the 81-year-old television legend, Judge Judy Final, invited to discuss her decades of experience in America's courtrooms. Charlie's usual arrogant demeanor suggested he was ready to debate anyone about anything, especially an overrated TV judge who he believed had built her career on cheap entertainment rather than real legal expertise. What Charlie Kirk didn't know was that Judge Judy had done her homework. Hidden beneath her calm exterior and folded hands lay information that would completely shatter his confidence and expose him as the intellectual fraud many suspected him to be. The seasoned jurist had spent hours researching Charlie's background, his legal claims, and most damaging of all, his complete lack of actual courtroom experience. She knew about his failed attempts to practice law, his fabricated credentials, and the sealed court documents that revealed his true legal incompetence. But the most explosive revelation was still coming. Tucked away in her leather portfolio was a piece of evidence so damaging that it would not only destroy Charlie's argument but reveal a shocking secret about his past that he had desperately tried to hide from his millions of followers. The host began with what seemed like a simple question about judicial reform, and Charlie immediately launched into his typical talking points about activist judges and liberal bias in the courts. His voice carried that familiar tone of absolute certainty that had made him famous among conservative audiences. He gestured dramatically, his confidence building with each word, completely unaware that he was about to step into a legal minefield. Judge Judy sat quietly, her sharp eyes never leaving his face, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She had handled over 20,000 real cases in her career, presided over actual courtrooms, and dealt with countless individuals who thought they could outsmart the system. Charlie Kirk was about to learn the difference between political theater and legal reality. The moment that would change everything was rapidly approaching. In exactly 47 seconds, Charlie would utter the words that would seal his fate, calling Judge Judy overrated and questioning her legal credentials. What he couldn't have imagined was that Judge Judy's response would expose not just his ignorance, but a hidden scandal from his past that would send shockwaves through the conservative movement and leave him begging to escape the studio before the cameras stopped rolling. Before we dive into this incredible takedown that's about to unfold, smash that like button and subscribe because you won't want to miss these explosive moments where overconfident pundits get completely demolished by people who actually know what they're talking about. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when arrogance meets expertise and the results are absolutely devastating. This wasn't just any ordinary interview clash between a political commentator and a television personality. This represented something much deeper and more significant about the crisis in American media and political discourse. On one side sat Charlie Kirk, representing the new generation of political influencers who built their careers on loud opinions, social media clout, and zero real-world experience. His millions of young followers hung on his every word, believing his confident delivery meant he possessed actual expertise. On the other side sat Judge Judy Final, embodying decades of genuine legal experience, courtroom wisdom, and the kind of institutional knowledge that can't be faked or bought with followers. This was generational arrogance versus earned wisdom, social media fame versus professional competence, and political theater versus legal reality. The collision was about to expose everything wrong with modern commentary culture. Charlie Kirk, at just 30 years old, had already built an empire of influence that most seasoned politicians could only dream of. As the founder and president of Turning Point USA, he commanded a social media army of over 3.2 million followers across platforms, making him one of the most recognizable faces in conservative politics. His organization boasted chapters on over 2,500 college campuses nationwide, with an annual budget exceeding $40 million. Kirk had mastered the art of political theater, delivering rapid-fire talking points with the confidence of someone who had never been seriously challenged by an actual expert. His typical debate style involved overwhelming opponents with statistics, pivoting when cornered, and relying on his youthful energy to steamroll through conversations before anyone could fact-check his claims. What made Charlie particularly dangerous was his ability to sound authoritative on subjects he knew virtually nothing about. He had dropped out of Harper College after just one semester, yet regularly debated constitutional law with actual attorneys. He had never held elected office, yet positioned himself as an expert on governance. Most tellingly, he had never practiced law, never set foot in a courtroom as anything other than a spectator, yet frequently criticized judges and legal decisions with the confidence of a seasoned attorney. His success came from understanding that in the age of social media, confidence often matters more than competence, and his 18 to 35-year-old audience rarely questioned his credentials as long as he confirmed their political biases. Kirk's rise to prominence had been meteoric, but built on shaky foundations. He founded Turning Point USA at age 18, with financial backing from conservative donors, who saw potential in his youthful energy and willingness to say anything for attention. His organization focused on combating what they called liberal bias on college campuses. But critics noted that Kirk himself had barely experienced college life. He made his reputation by staging provocative events, creating viral social media moments, and positioning himself as the voice of young conservatives. His debate performances relied heavily on prepared talking points, friendly audiences, and moderators who rarely pressed him on specifics. He had mastered the art of the political soundbite, but had never faced someone with the legal expertise to dismantle his arguments piece by piece. The contrast with his opponent that day couldn't have been more stark. Judge Judy at 81 years old, represented everything Charlie Kirk was not: genuine expertise, hard-earned credibility, and decades of real-world experience. She had graduated from New York Law School in 1965, becoming one of the few female attorneys in a male-dominated profession. Her legal career began in corporate law, but she quickly moved to family court, where she spent 25 years as a prosecutor and judge, handling the most complex and emotionally challenging cases in the New York court system. During her tenure as a supervising judge in Manhattan's family court, she presided over more than 20,000 cases, dealing with everything from custody battles to juvenile criminal proceedings. Judge Judy's transition to television in 1996 had made her a household name, but critics who dismissed her as merely a TV judge fundamentally misunderstood her qualifications. Her show wasn't entertainment masquerading as law. It was law presented in an entertaining format. Every case she handled was a real legal proceeding with binding arbitration, and her decisions carried the same weight as any other court judgment. Over 25 years on television, she had resolved over 15,000 disputes, making her one of the most experienced arbitrators in American legal history. Her success wasn't built on theatrics or social media followers, but on consistently fair, legally sound decisions that both parties could respect. What made Judge Judy particularly formidable was her ability to cut through nonsense and expose fraud with surgical precision. She had dealt with countless individuals who tried to lie, manipulate, or misrepresent facts in her courtroom, and she had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect deception. Her questioning style was methodical, relentless, and designed to reveal truth rather than score political points. Unlike Charlie Kirk, who thrived in environments where he could control the narrative, Judge Judy operated in a realm where facts mattered more than followers, and experience trumped enthusiasm every single time. The setup for their confrontation began weeks earlier, when Fox Nation executives decided to create a special series called Generational Perspectives, featuring conversations between established figures and rising young voices in conservative politics. The concept seemed straightforward. Pair experienced conservatives with younger counterparts to discuss policy issues and bridge generational gaps within the movement. Judge Judy, despite her television fame, had maintained conservative political views throughout her career, making her an ideal choice for the series. Charlie Kirk was the obvious selection to represent the younger generation, given his massive following and reputation as a rising star. The topic chosen for their discussion was reforming America's justice system, a subject that seemed to play to both of their strengths. Kirk had frequently criticized what he called activist judges and liberal bias in the courts, while Judge Judy brought actual experience from within the system. The producers expected a respectful conversation about different approaches to judicial reform, with Kirk representing the outsider's perspective and Judge Judy offering institutional wisdom. What they didn't anticipate was how thoroughly Kirk would misread both his opponent and the situation. The initial atmosphere in the studio was professional, but charged with anticipation. Fox Nation had heavily promoted the episode, billing it as a fascinating conversation between two generations of conservative thought. Charlie Kirk arrived with his usual entourage of social media managers and handlers, treating the appearance as another opportunity to create viral content for his platforms. He spent the pre-interview time crafting tweets and Instagram posts about his upcoming appearance with the famous TV judge, clearly viewing Judge Judy as another stepping stone for his brand rather than a formidable legal mind. Judge Judy, meanwhile, arrived with her characteristic professionalism, having spent hours researching Kirk's background, his organization's legal challenges, and most importantly, his complete lack of actual legal training or courtroom experience. She had watched his previous debate performances, noting his tendency to deflect when challenged and his reliance on prepared talking points rather than genuine understanding. Her preparation was thorough and methodical, the approach of someone who had spent decades preparing for legal battles where preparation meant the difference between victory and humiliation. The studio crew sensed the potential for fireworks, but they expected the typical political back and forth that characterized most contemporary political programming. What nobody anticipated was that they were about to witness not a political debate, but a legal education delivered with the precision of a master craftsman to an overconfident amateur who had no idea what he was walking into. The stage was set for one of the most devastating takedowns in political television history. The host opened with what seemed like a softball question about judicial activism, asking both guests to share their perspectives on judges who they felt overstepped their constitutional bounds. Judge Judy responded first, methodically explaining the difference between judicial interpretation and activism, drawing from her decades of actual courtroom experience. Her answer was measured, professional, and grounded in legal precedent. Then it was Charlie Kirk's turn, and that's when everything started to unravel. Charlie leaned back in his chair with his signature smirk, his confidence radiating as he began his response. "Well, I think we need to be honest about something here," he said, gesturing dismissively toward Judge Judy. "The problem with our justice system isn't just activist judges in federal courts. It's that we've elevated TV personalities who call themselves judges but are really just entertainers." His voice carried that familiar tone of absolute certainty that had made him famous among his followers. "I mean, Judge Judy here is basically the poster child for everything wrong with how Americans view the legal system. She's turned justice into a reality show." The studio fell uncomfortably quiet. The host's eyes widened slightly, clearly not expecting such a direct attack on his other guest. Camera operators instinctively zoomed in on both faces, sensing they were capturing something explosive. The handful of studio audience members shifted nervously in their seats, unsure whether this was planned confrontation or genuine hostility. Judge Judy's expression remained completely neutral, but those who knew her well could recognize the subtle signs. Her fingers, which had been loosely clasped, tightened almost imperceptibly. Her eyes, which had been warmly engaged, took on the sharp focus of a predator identifying prey. She had heard countless attacks on her credentials over the years, but rarely from someone so thoroughly unqualified to make them. "That's an interesting perspective, Mr. Kirk," she responded, her voice maintaining its professional tone despite the obvious provocation. "I'm curious about your experience with the justice system that informs such a strong opinion about judicial competence." Charlie completely missed the warning in her measured response. Instead, he doubled down with the reckless confidence that had served him well in friendly conservative media environments. "Look, Judge Judy, with all due respect, you're overrated. You've spent decades putting on a show for cameras, making snap judgments about small claims disputes. That's not real law. Real judicial reform requires people who understand constitutional principles, not TV ratings." He gestured broadly, his voice rising with excitement as he sensed what he thought was momentum. "Your show might be entertaining, but it's exactly the kind of pop culture approach to justice that's destroying respect for our legal institutions." The moment those words left his mouth, something shifted in the studio atmosphere. Judge Judy's demeanor transformed from professional courtesy to lethal focus. Her decades of courtroom experience had taught her to recognize when someone was not just wrong, but dangerously, arrogantly wrong. She had dealt with thousands of litigants who came into her courtroom with attitude and ignorance, but rarely had she encountered someone so publicly confident in their complete misunderstanding of both her qualifications and the legal system itself. "Overrated," she repeated slowly, her voice taking on the tone that had made countless defendants squirm in her courtroom. "That's quite a bold assessment from someone with your background." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Charlie Kirk, still riding his wave of perceived success, had no idea that he had just triggered a response that would destroy not just his argument, but potentially his entire career. The countdown to his humiliation had officially begun. If you're enjoying watching overconfident pundits get completely destroyed by actual experts, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next is absolutely devastating. You won't believe how quickly Charlie Kirk goes from arrogant to desperate. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on the measured cadence that had terrified litigants for decades. "Mr. Kirk, let me share some facts about my overrated television career and snap judgments." She opened her leather portfolio with surgical precision. Before my show aired its first episode, I had already presided over 20,487 real cases in New York family court. Not small claims TV drama, but life-altering decisions involving child custody, domestic violence, and juvenile criminal proceedings. Charlie's smirk began to falter as the numbers hit him. Each of those cases required extensive legal research, constitutional analysis, and precedent review. How many real cases have you presided over, Mr. Kirk? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Charlie shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his confident posture cracking for the first time. Well, I'm not a judge, but I understand constitutional. Judge Judy cut him off with the precision of a scalpel. You're not a lawyer either. You attended Harper College for exactly 1 semester before dropping out. You've never taken a constitutional law class, never passed the bar exam, and never argued a single case in any courtroom anywhere. The color drained from Charlie's face as she continued her methodical demolition. Yet you feel qualified to lecture someone who graduated from New York Law School in 1965, spent 25 years as a prosecutor and supervising judge, and has resolved over 35,000 legal disputes throughout her career. Charlie attempted to recover, his voice noticeably less confident. But Judge Judy, television isn't the same as real. She demolished this pathetic attempt at a comeback before he could finish. Every case on my show is real arbitration with legally binding decisions. The judgments I render carry the same weight as any civil court ruling. I've handled more actual legal proceedings than most sitting judges will see in their entire careers. Her eyes locked onto his with laser focus. What's your legal experience again? Oh right, you have absolutely none. The moment of complete realization hit Charlie like a freight train. His trademark arrogance evaporated as he understood he wasn't debating a TV personality, but one of the most experienced legal minds in America. His hands began fidgeting with his papers. His leg bounced nervously under the table and his eyes darted toward the exit signs. The confident young man who had entered the studio was rapidly being replaced by someone who looked like he wanted to crawl under the furniture. Judge Judy wasn't finished. You mentioned constitutional principles. Mr. Kirk, let me ask you about the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause and how it applies to family court proceedings. Charlie's mouth opened, but no words came out. His face flushed red as the silence stretched painfully long. Perhaps you could explain the difference between binding arbitration and advisory proceedings. Another devastating silence. No? How about the basic requirements for standing in federal court versus state jurisdiction? By this point, Charlie Kirk was visibly sweating, tugging at his collar and looking desperately at his handlers off camera. The man who had called Judge Judy overrated was now completely speechless, outclassed by decades of real experience meeting inflated social media ego. The destruction was complete, and everyone in the studio knew it. The studio atmosphere became suffocating as Charlie Kirk's complete intellectual collapse played out in real time. His desperate attempts to salvage the situation only made things worse. Look, I think we're getting off track here, he stammered, his voice cracking slightly as he tried to pivot away from Judge Judy's devastating questions. The real issue is judicial activism in federal courts, not individual qualifications. But Judge Judy wasn't about to let him escape that easily. Mr. Kirk, you just questioned my qualifications while having none yourself. That's not getting off track, that's the entire point of this conversation. Charlie's panic was visible to everyone in the studio. He kept glancing at his phone, clearly hoping for some kind of rescue from his social media team. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his water glass, and beads of sweat were now clearly visible on his forehead under the studio lights. I think maybe we should move on to other topics, he said weakly, looking pleadingly at the host who seemed frozen by the intensity of what was unfolding. Within minutes of the show ending, social media exploded with clips of the confrontation. The hashtag #CharlieKirkDestroyed began trending immediately, with the most viral clip showing the exact moment his confident expression crumbled when Judge Judy revealed his complete lack of legal education. Twitter was merciless in its response. One viral tweet read, "Charlie Kirk just learned the difference between having followers and having knowledge." Another posted, "Judge Judy just gave Charlie Kirk the legal education he never got in college." Conservative commentators found themselves in the awkward position of trying to defend the indefensible. Even Fox News hosts struggled to spin Charlie's humiliation into anything resembling a victory. Liberal commentators, meanwhile, were having a field day, with clips of the exchange being played on every major news network. The footage became an instant classic in political takedown compilations, joining the ranks of legendary moments when overconfident politicians met their match. The long-term consequences for Charlie Kirk's reputation were severe and lasting. Within a week of the confrontation, enrollment in Turning Point USA chapters began declining on college campuses across the country. Students who had been drawn to his confident rhetoric started questioning everything else he had told them. If he could be so wrong about Judge Judy's qualifications, what else was he wrong about? Became a common refrain among former supporters. His speaking fees dropped significantly, and several universities canceled upcoming appearances, citing concerns about his credibility. Judge Judy's response to the viral moment was characteristically direct and professional. In a follow-up interview, she said, "I've spent my entire career dealing with people who mistake volume for knowledge and confidence for competence. Mr. Kirk learned a valuable lesson that day about the importance of knowing what you're talking about before you speak." Her measured response only further highlighted the contrast between her professionalism and Charlie's amateur hour performance. This incident revealed something deeply troubling about modern political discourse. We've created a media environment where social media followers are treated as equivalent to actual expertise, where confident delivery matters more than factual accuracy, and where young people mistake political theater for genuine knowledge. Charlie Kirk's humiliation served as a perfect example of what happens when the social media bubble meets real-world expertise. It demonstrated that no amount of followers, funding, or favorable coverage can substitute for actual knowledge and experience. The broader lesson extends far beyond this single confrontation. In an age of information overload and social media influencers, we must learn to distinguish between authentic expertise and manufactured authority. Real knowledge comes from years of study, practical experience, and genuine understanding, not from viral videos and Twitter followers. This moment reminded America that expertise still matters, experience still counts, and that sometimes the most important thing a person can do is simply know when they're outmatched. Comment below. Do you think Charlie Kirk learned his lesson? Or will he keep underestimating people who actually know what they're talking about? Share this video with anyone who needs to see what happens when arrogance meets actual expertise. This is exactly why we need to respect knowledge and experience over loud opinions. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more moments where real experts put overconfident pundits in their place. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss when social media confidence collides with genuine competence.